Hey everybody, Chuck and Stacey here. Welcome to VO Buzz Weekly, and I believe today is all about video games.
It's about video games, it's about incredible acting, and it is about Nolan North. You know him from Uncharted, Assassin's Creed, Deadpool. Whew, he's awesome.
Heck yeah, let's get buzzed.
Turn it up.
Get ready.
You're tuned in to VO Buzz Weekly.
And now, prepare to get seriously buzzed with your hosts, Chuck Duran and Stacey J. Aswad.
Okay, you may recognize our guest from Pretty Little Liars, but you definitely know him from his stellar work in animation and some of the most popular video game franchises to date, like Assassin's Creed, Uncharted, Destiny, Deadpool, Prince of Persia. I could do this for an hour and a half and still not name everybody. You can look it up on your own, but in the meantime, stay with us because we're getting buzzed with the totally awesome Nolan North.
Nolan North, ladies and gentlemen.
Bam!
There we are.
Bam, get down.
Thanks for being here.
Are you kidding? Thanks
Good
for
to
having
see
me.
you, buddy.
Yeah.
How are you? Love
I'm doing
the
great.
hat.
Yeah, well, thank you. I just did
The chapeau.
I didn't do my hair today, so I just figured
I don't understand
cover it up.
how somebody like you who isn't very busy, how could you be so hard to get on this show?
I don't know. You know, I've been outside. I've banged on the door. You're like, we got Jess this week. Thank you. We got Rob Paulson. We got Troy Baker. We don't need you.
That's
so I'm just
funny,
glad
man.
you could fit me in at some point.
No. This guy is seriously the busiest guy in the world. So thank you for making a little time for us.
Well,
Of course.
as I would
We
say, I got
appreciate
an extra scoop of persistence, so I'm like, we're just going to keep doing it. But you guys actually were at the Calgary
Yeah,
con
last time we saw each other was at a con in Calgary or something like
earlier in
that.
2016.
Probably having some dinner in the green room or something.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, dinner.
Dinner.
Snacks, whatever
Snacks.
you decide
Green
to.
room.
Yeah.
Grazing.
Yeah, well, you were busy getting ready to
Getting
go
ready to
jam
do a
out
show
there with
with
Rock Sugar.
absolutely, and you were signing autographs and making billions of dollars.
Yes.
Well,
Everyone around the world is very excited.
Billions is a
Billions!
billions is a
that
bit of an
gross or
I
exaggeration.
love
net?
using that term though. Billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars.
I made billions today.
It was hundreds of millions in Calgary.
Hundreds of
but
millions.
it was just loonies and
Right.
and toonies.
Loonies and Toonies.
Loonies and Toonies.
Get down. Okay, so we're going to get down.
Yeah, get
Interview
down,
starts
Chuck.
now, ladies and gentlemen.
Here we
go. So, dude, you have a background in journalism, stand-up comedy. How'd you find your way from all that into acting?
You know, people ask me that a lot, like, how did you become an actor? And for me, it was really kind of a process of elimination, you know. I went to college to play baseball, and I did that, and I had a chance to play some pro, and I hurt my shoulder, and that was done, and I figured, well, the next best thing, you know, to be around sports that I liked would be, you know, get on ESPN, be that guy that
That's
goes out there and
good.
do that. So I was dating someone in Boston, so I went to graduate school at Emerson College for broadcasting, because I had a degree in journalism from University of North Carolina, where Charles Kuralt and Roger Mudd and famously Stuart Scott, who's passed away from ESPN. He was there after me, though. Sadly, I never knew him. But and here's the thing: I did grad school and then got a job right away in New York, New Jersey, in that market, a new station. It started up, and I got a chance to be an on-camera reporter, and I did it for a year. And I saw and reported on some of the most horrific things, and it just wasn't me, you know. And I was living in New York City and traveling out every day, and I had a cameraman who had a bit of a drug problem at the time.
Whoopsie.
So
Those are good cameramen, though. They'll do anything.
So your shots
when
were
they
a little
show up,
wonky.
Well,
When they show
the
up.
shots could be wonky. I wasn't fine. He wouldn't show up, and I had the camera. So
Oh, my
sometimes
God.
I interviewed Al Gore when he was the vice president, like this.
You were doing selfies before they were selfies.
I was. Yeah. Well, the camera weighed about
Oh
30
my
pounds.
gosh, dude, that's insane.
I remember I was in Jersey City, New Jersey, interviewing Al Gore, and it just looked like a complete idiot. Like, hi, and NBC and all these other stations around. I'm like, hi.
Yeah.
20, what was I, 22,
Everybody has two guys. You're
23
doing your
years
own.
old.
But you're a
Your own
problem
camera
solver.
work.
You made it work, see?
Yeah, well, you have to.
Yes.
That's how it works. But yeah, and then I just was miserable, you know. But so I started freelancing. Just to get stuff off my chest, I started going out and doing some stand-up. I had always written it, and there were a couple open mics, and I had done it in college. At one point, I just had done it at a place called Charlie Goodnight's Comedy Zone down in Chapel Hill, then in Durham, and here and there, and local little amateur contests just for a goof.
Just for goof.
And then in New York, I was doing it.
Did you think you were funny at the time?
You know what? I actually once won a contest in college, and I got to open for George Carlin.
Oh, wow.
And like you got 7 minutes, and there was a few other of us, that got to do it. And I went backstage, and it turned out my parents' first landlord in New York was his best friend growing up. He's like, you know Pepe with the glass eye? This is great. And I'm like, He said he used to take it out and he'd put his mouth to the girls. And he told me this whole story. But the one thing he taught me, he said one night, is that don't ever try to go out there and make people laugh. It was more important to go out with a point of view that you, and a humorous point of view that you find funny. Go out with something to say. And if they find it funny, great. If they don't, F them, is what he told me.
Yeah.
So, I remember doing that and there were nights I don't know if I ever really bombed. Not that I was great, but I never really killed. And I did it for a while, and I did it a little bit in LA, but over the years I became friends with comics, and there's a different breed, there's a different blood. I'm such a fan of comedy, and when I see these guys, they're constantly writing, they're constantly coming up with an interesting point of view,
right.
And I realized I didn't have that. And what I was doing was, I really liked comedic acting more. And so during the stand-up is when I had a buddy who was writing plays, and I just started doing plays in New York and here and there, just doing everything, painting apartment buildings at the time, and bartending and waiter, whatever you could do just to make a buck. I quit my job as a reporter, and my mother went ballistic, and I sold my car because you really don't need one in New York, and that's all the money I had.
Yeah.
And I think I'd done it for just under a year, and I just said, I was going to go to Juilliard. I figured, I'll go be an actor, learn how to be an actor, I guess.
Yeah.
And my friend one night were just drinking some whiskey at this crappy apartment. We had a 2-room apartment, and I had no money, and he bought me a mattress, and I slept in his living room. And we're like, I was like 24, 25, and we literally had to, just.
Those were the good old days.
It was a great, it was a great thing. People said, it must be so hard to be broke in New York. Paul Newman once famously said, the only way to live in New York is above it.
Yeah.
But I would second, you can also live below it. Yeah. It's the people in the middle that struggle because they're trying to get to the top.
Right.
But if you got nothing and you have no aspirations for something.
Yeah. The
You're
tiniest
golden.
little thing makes it a great day, right?
Yeah, no.
A bed.
No, we did a bed. But, seriously, you had a couple bucks. You make your rent, had a couple bucks to get your coffee or a couple beers that night. And working in restaurants, I tell, actors, it's a great deal because you every time you work, you eat for free. And they don't know that. But, so it just, that's how it all came about. It was just this, this process of where you're kind of on a river, and people strugle with the oars trying to get somewhere. Yeah. And if you just take them out and see where it takes you, the current takes you, amazing things can happen.
And then what brought you to LA?
What was the catalyst to get here?
Literally a drunken night in New York, saying, "I guess Juilliard." And he looked at me and he goes, he said, "It's a 4-year program." He said, "You're going to be almost pushing 30 by the time you get out." He said, "Go to California. They don't care what
they don't care."
He goes, go to California, LA. They don't care. They don't care if you have a resume or not." And
I thought you were going to say they don't care if you're old. Yeah.
Exactly. And here's the thing. I moved out here. And within 6 months, I had a 5-year contract with an ABC soap opera. And
within 5 months?
Yes.
6 months. 6 months, yeah.
That was Port Charles, right?
That was Port Charles,
Port Charles.
Wow.
Nice.
So you came out here, 6 months later, you booked this big gig.
Yeah.
Acting.
Yeah.
And so did you think, oh man, this is going to be a piece of cake here in Los Angeles?
No. First of all, it was 6 long months, but again, I took that mentality I had in New York. When I decided to be an actor, I never had this delusion of wanting to be famous or be rich. That anybody who gets into it for that, is in for a long, struggle.
Absolutely.
Because it's not about that. For me, it was the process of it. I remember one of my first auditions, I got to audition for Friends. and I was on the Warner Brothers lot, and I walked out of there, and I did really well. And I called all my friends. I had the first cell phone. I finally got a cell phone, and I went and I called. Actually, that's not true. I had to go to a payphone. And I started calling a bunch of my buddies. I said, "You're not gonna believe where I am. Where? I'm on the Warner Brothers lot. I just read for Friends. You're gonna be on Friends?" I'm like, "No, I don't think I got it," which I didn't. But I was just so stoked.
But I was there,
Again, I had 2 jobs. I had a lot of experience in New York and I worked with painting, and then out here I did contracting, and I got with contractors. I wasn't a contractor, but I did carpentry and I did painting and during the day, and then at night find a bar, find a restaurant, bartend, and it was great.
You're a hard worker, man.
Well, it's just
you were paying your dues big time.
Well, the thing is, people say that, but like I was enjoying paying my dues. I mean, I actually made more money doing all these little odd jobs. I had more cash in my pocket on a daily basis than I did in New York as a reporter. When you start out, you're making nothing. And I was miserable covering house fires and people murdered and people hit by trains, which was just awful. Grisly stuff. I've seen things that, are I wish I could get rid of that. The things you see.
You put them into your dark characters.
No, it's in there. But the thing about it is it was, then I came here and it's like this sunshine. I'm not in Manhattan where it's all this buildings. It was the beach. I remember just I enjoyed the process of
really
becoming
cool,
an actor and not knowing any kind of break would come, but always feeling I'm going to make a living as an actor. I won't call myself an actor until I pay the majority of my bills with acting work. So people, I used to tell people at the bar, they'd come up and they go, "Oh, a guy like you, what are you, about 25? You bet you're an actor." I say, "Yes, I do a little acting until the bartending takes off." So that's good. And they would just kind of look at you. But I would always get you extra tips.
Till the
I was going to say, so
off.
you really had a self-belief that you were going to do it. You didn't have a timeline or if it doesn't happen you didn't doubt yourself.
No plan B was my plan. There was no plan B.
That's
it's like,
a good plan.
So why not? And you know what? And I had a great time. I mean, we had a great time. And, hell, in some ways, the first show I did, it was 5 days a week. There's no hiatus on daytime dramas like that.
Right.
So it actually got in the way of a lot of our fun. But I, it turns out I grew up in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and one of the guys on the show was an actor who grew up probably about 20 minutes from where I grew up. So I'm like, "You're from Newton, dude?" And he's like, "You're from Attleboro?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're massholes." And next thing you know, there we are running around together. And then we had a little bit more money in our pocket. And it was, just a different world.
Exactly.
But again, just kind of on that,
That's cool, man.
another step on the process.
Right,
Absolutely.
Right. So
What do you
then when
think-
oh, sorry, go ahead. Just kidding.
What would you say?
Pick up.
Hey, Nolan, what would you say are your strengths as an actor? I mean, because obviously when you're doing video games and all that stuff, man, that's pure acting as well.
Yeah, I think I've always had a good imagination, and I've never shied away from making an ass of myself. I'm not self-conscious like that. And I think I've always, even when I was little, I'll preface this by saying I've said this before, that some of the best actors you'll ever see are kids. You watch a 6-7-year-old running around their backyard, and that treehouse is a pirate ship, and the sticks are the swords, and that whatever. They can make anything up, and they just play, and they don't think about anything but playing and being in that role. And when mom runs out and goes, "Who's hungry?" They don't go, "Oh, damn it, you broke our center. Everyone back to zero, let's start again." They just go, "Arg, peanut butter and jelly, arg," and they're right back in it. And I've always, when you watch a kid, it's like, I'm acting, I'm playing, I'm out, what? Yeah, no, that's fine. And then I'm right back into it. And I just always embraced that spirit of play. Shakespeare never had actors, he had players. And I think we lost that word over time. And everyone has their process, but that's mine. Mine is just, I'd rather just be talking, whatever, and then they go, action. I do all the work, the prep work before, I know my lines. An actor's job is not that difficult when it comes to know your lines, hit your mark, and do it truthfully. And You know, because there's people who show up on a set before you're there, and they're going to be there long after.
Right.
So, you know, show the respect to them.
Sure, man.
Yes.
And,
yes.
But yeah, no, and I've never, you know, I just never have, I don't know. I've never
overthink it.
You know, keep it simple,
Well,
stupid.
you're a collaborator,
simple,
and
stupid.
you recognize that you're part of the process. It's not just.
It's one of my favorite things about
Yeah.
it. And I think that's one of my favorite things about gaming. I don't think any part of the entertainment industry is more collaborative than some of the gaming stuff, especially the performance capture I get to do.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is when you meet
fun.
somebody and they go, "Wow, you just really done so well," and all these animated series you're doing, everything. Do you ever in the video games? Do you ever want to do real acting? And you just
Oh boy.
Yeah. Do you
no,
like smack
no,
Cut 'em out.
I want to keep doing the fake acting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that unitard acting with the sensors. That's like
Right.
what's that? So do you feel like? What do you feel like for you was your sort of I'm in voice, or what was your break? Do you think it was Uncharted, or for you, what was it?
My big break was without a doubt Uncharted. It changed my life. Amy Hennig, who created the series and was the one who cast me, pulled me aside when I had the job and said, "I want you to put as much of you into this character as anything. You know, it's you in this situation." And going back to what we were talking about before, I was the kid in the backyard.
Yeah.
I was playing Indiana Jones now in that type of character. And we sat and talked, and I wanted to make him the character that is he's the everyman. You know, at the time games were just rough, tough, and guy gets shy, he's like, "Ugh, I'll keep going," and instead of I remember telling her about, I think when he punches someone, it should really hurt. And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I've been in fights, and I was in a bar fight once, and I hit this guy, and boom, and you think, you're like, yeah, take that. You're like, oh my God, I think I broke my hand. I'm pretty sure I broke my hand. That hurt so bad." And so it was like, we did that
So
with
you
Nathan
needed-
Drake.
yeah.
You're like, yeah. Oh no! Especially in the first game, we did a bunch of those things, and it was great. So
Hysterical, man.
yeah, so when he falls on concrete, you're like, "Oh, I'm okay." Just do those. I'm coming. Rather than jumps right
Because
back
a
up and
lot
he
of your
goes.
ad-libs
Yeah,
made it in, which is so cool.
absolutely.
Which is so cool.
But we were always encouraged to do that. Now, and in fairness to Amy, who wrote the first three, and Josh Scherer in the fourth, a lot of that was on the page.
Right.
But it was more in the gameplay where they would let they also had lines written, and especially with Amy when she got to know my voice so well that I'd come in and like, yeah, I would definitely say that.
Yeah.
Definitely say that.
That's cool.
That's
so
cool.
so we talk a lot about the ad-libbing, but I'd be remiss if I said, I made it all up. It's all about me.
Yeah.
No,
No.
there was a lot of that stuff was on the page, and there are a
Right,
few that
right.
came out of
Right.
it. We used to call it panning for gold. It's like there's a bunch of crap, but
Oh,
there's one
There's a
nugget,
good one.
and it might make the game. Yeah, and that was on
Yeah.
that was their decisions.
Yeah.
One of the other people I should mention that's very integral in my success was Pat Brady,
Right.
my agent, who brought
She's
me
mine
over.
too.
She's
amazing.
a sweetheart, and I owe so much to her because a friend of mine from that daytime show, she actually knew me from Port Charles, and one of the other actors on it said, "I'm going to put you in touch with this agent who does voiceover. You should do this." And my wife for years had just said, "Please stop badgering me with these voices at the house. You should do this."
Yeah.
And Pat was at a smaller agency at the time. Immediately brought me on board after she heard some of my stuff, and I still didn't know what you do with that, and I really didn't have an understanding because I had grown up. It was Mel Blanc. I'm like, I only figured there's a few guys. I knew Frank Welker. I knew Paulson. Well, I knew all the Animaniacs.
Yeah.
So I mean, and Tress and what's the other guy's name?
That one guy,
Jess
the guy with a
Harnell?
lot of hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jess Harnell.
Yes.
It stays on when he keeps his hat on too. It's his hair.
I so hope you see this, Jess.
He watches.
Yeah. He'll know I'm kidding too. He goes, he knows who I am.
Yeah.
I knew Jess. I knew Rob and Trez and Welker, and there were certain guys but Mel Blanc, I didn't realize you could do this for a living.
Yeah.
And everybody said, oh, well, voiceover, it's a very small community, and it's really tough to break into. And thank God for gaming, which really kind of gave me my start. But Pat Brady was the first person that took me under her wing. And then when she moved over to CESD, she brought me and a few other people with her. And they're Kathy Lizio, my other agent, who is, and all the agents there, but they handle most of the games and the animation. Those two have been my angels. Just very, very, very happy to have them as part of my team. I don't know if I don't think I'd be where I am without them.
Well, let's do it for Pat. Hashtag CESD Pride.
Yes, absolutely. I'll second
We
that.
love
baby.
CESD.
Yep. So Uncharted was the big break, right?
Yeah.
So take us a little bit, go back if you can, and take us through the process of how it came about, like the audition process. Where did it come? Were you nervous auditioning for it? Did you audition multiple times, callbacks?
Yeah, no, you know what, the thing is when the daytime show had gone off the air, when Port Charles had been canceled, I actually I was married at this point with, my second son had just been born, and I just went into okay, now, I literally bought a pickup and started putting up crown molding. I knew a guy who had a business, and I started putting up crown, and one of my friends, Chris Edgerly, who's now on The Simpsons, as a utility player on The Simpsons, doing great. He was my helper, and we'd go and I think most of the crown molding in Valencia, California
was installed
by me because I just undercut all these other people.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
They're selling it on eBay
I did
right
some
now.
custom closets for people. I did all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, no, I
Your
could do all
house
that
must
stuff.
be gorgeous.
Oh my
And
gosh,
no, I
man.
did all that stuff, and but and then gaming started. They said, "Hey, do you want to do a game?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't want to put this up." And that's when I started getting into gaming. So I had done another motion capture job for Sony, and finally this thing for Uncharted came up, and the first audition was actually at just a standard studio where I'd done some animation and other games.
Did that
I
come
was
through
in
your
Burbank.
agent?
Yeah, the agents called, and I got the call, and people were in the booth, and it was Gordon Hunt, the director, Helen Hunt's father, who was a big wig at Hanna-Barbera for years, and Amy Hennig, the creator and writer, and a couple other people, and they came in and they were telling me about the what it was and setting it all up, and I had the pages and I had looked at the material, and I said okay, and it was a vocal booth. And they're in the booth with me, and there's the glass and the engineers on the other side, and the door's open. I said, okay. They said, okay, whenever you're ready. And I went, okay. You're going to stay here? And they go, yeah, is that okay? I'm like, don't you have to be in there? And doesn't they need the door shut?
Yeah.
And they all looked at each other, and they go, you know this is a motion capture, performance capture job, right? And I'm like, what?
Apparently not.
No, well, we want you to use the space and move around. I said, this is a 5x5
Yeah,
room.
that's
I don't
where
know.
am I going?
I'm 6 feet
Now
tall.
now I'm making jokes about it. We're laughing, and so I started reading the lines, just kind of like I would do now. I literally had to switch into an on-camera job. I get it. Okay,
Right.
so I started
gotta
doing that,
memorize it.
and for some reason they gave me a call back, and it was probably just because of the talk and the banter we had going between it, laughing about the fact that I had no idea what they were talking about.
Right.
The callback, the next audition was over in Santa Monica, and it was a proper it looked like a dance studio room.
Yeah.
Wood floors, and the same people were there, but now they're at a table, and there was a girl sitting there reading with me, and I used the space, and they said, in this scene he has to jump behind a rock or whatever. And I took a chair, put it out in the middle of the room, and as I'm, had to pretend I was running with a gun, shooting, and I ran to slide behind the chair, and I had to come up like this, ready to go. And I slid, and I misjudged the slickness of the wood floor, and I slid right by and like with my other hand grabbed the chair and slid by, and one of the famous utterances that Nathan Drake was, I said it for the first time out of nowhere. I just went, oh crap, and I pulled myself back behind the chair and I said, that was pretty stupid. And then just continue with the lines.
Yeah.
And oh crap, for any Uncharted fans out there, know that became kind of my signature thing.
yes.
And it came out of this complete mistake I'd made.
Wow.
Also, the girl reading with me was Emily Rose, who became Elena from the series.
Nice.
We just had a certain thing going, and she's gone on to great successes.
Yeah.
It was. I remember the room.
That's so cool.
You know,
man.
it was really, really cool. And yes, it's my big break. It's made me a better actor. I've worked with amazing actors over the years.
Yeah.
And being the lead on a project and having so many people out there be so. Fond of this series,
Oh, they know
and
everything about
it's
the
somebody
character.
that is me. You know, that it's not. I'm not putting on a voice or anything.
It's just you.
Right,
it's
right.
just me, and in those circumstances. So
Wow.
it's very, very special.
Well, you
to
were.
me.
There's no question. I mean, you were born to play that. I mean, you are him. He is you. It's like.
Yeah. Okay. Off
Yeah.
topic.
Sure.
And by the way, congratulations, because
Yeah.
that's a big giant thing, man. And it's like
It just keeps going and going, and
Absolutely.
everyone's
But-
discovering it. It's so cool.
slightly off that topic, but we've had some people request. And they say, when you have Nolan on the show, can you please have him do his Sean Connery? He's the best at it.
Oh, no,
including
no.
my buddy Jay Fouquet, who's probably watching right
Well,
now.
no, he was talking about like
No, it's
Sean
not true.
Connery, like as a B actor trying to
Yes.
get
Oh,
extra
who
jobs.
that was
told-
it.
Was that Fouquet?
Jay Fouquet.
Yes.
What it was is one of my favorite times of my life is when is before we had all these USB mics and all these things where you can audition from home.
Yes.
Right.
It was a pain in the butt, but we used to have to drive to the agency to CSD in Century City area, LA, and you'd have to go in, sign in to do your auditions. And you'd pick up your copy and you'd start working on it and you look at it. But the lines, there's so many clients, the wait could be 2 hours or more.
Yeah.
So we used to call it, just hanging on the marble, because it's a marble foyer that's out there.
Right.
And
Hanging
we
on
would
the
just
marble.
make things up. And again, my pride with all the comics that I knew.
Yeah.
Chris Edgerly was one of them who just, we would just go out there and do bits. We just do bits all the time. And one of the ones I came up with is, I said, imagine, everyone would do impressions and we're going back and forth. It's like, here's your Pacino. Everyone's doing, and then everybody would start doing it. And then, and at the time, and you'd be going back and forth. And, everyone had a Sean Connery. And it's not that this one's very good or not, but what we do is I said, no. And we'd always try to up each other and top each other.
Yeah.
And you did Sean Connery, and I said, well, this one may not be good, but how about Sean Connery had he not made it? And it was just like, can you imagine what would happen? And it'd just be like he walks in, he gets his copy, like all the bunch of schmucks that we were there, and he's just like, hey, Sean, he said, hello, gentlemen. Yes. Listen, I have to run pretty quickly because I have an audition for the new Cheetah Girls movie over at Disney, so fingers crossed. Also looking to become the new spokesman for Chick-fil-A. Or is it Fila? I'm not quite sure. And we would go back, we would just make this stuff up, and everybody would.
It passes the time.
Yeah, and
That's hysterical,
then we'd come in, and then we just always try to top each other.
That's good.
And and the sad thing is, one of our friends was Jason Connery, who was a client there, and he'd come in and be like, no, don't do that, because you wouldn't do it, because you don't want to upset him. He's the nicest guy, and it's just like, well, I hope. He'd probably find it funny too, but we're just like, let's not push the boundaries that much.
Yeah.
You never know.
That's
We'll go off to
hysterical.
somebody else.
I
This
love
is
that.
so funny.
Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing
Thank
that.
No, but
you.
that's what we do. It was, and there you go. There's that. We go back to the beginning with the, you're struggling trying to find your success, your niche, but you're having fun every day.
Absolutely.
The one great thing about the voiceover community, and I'm sure people have sat here and told you this before, it is the best group of people.
Absolutely. Bar none.
And you literally become kind of a family, you know, and it's crazy because, you know, those guys I mentioned before, I mean, Jess Harnell, watching him, and he's a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not after he hears what I said,
Right.
but
Yeah.
no,
He's
but
got a
I saw
thick skin.
Rob Paulson today.
Yeah.
You know, I play golf now with
Yeah.
Frank Welker.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable that you get to not only work and know your heroes, but
Yeah.
to become friends with them. Maurice LaMarche. I mean,
great guy.
these amazing
Yeah,
talents.
gifted,
It's
And the
it's
common
best.
denominator in all those guys you just mentioned is that each one of them is like a genuinely super loving,
They are.
kind person.
Genuine
Yeah,
is the
Yes.
big key
Yes.
because there are so many disingenuous people in the
Totally.
entertainment industry.
Right.
And I think then it goes back to people who want to be famous rather than be
Exactly.
well respected for what
Yeah.
they do.
Do you find when you go into the on-camera world in projects, I mean, like you were on Pretty Little Liars for a good while, you know, that you kind of create a little bubble around yourself to keep that?
No, I don't know. I don't think it's that. You know, you know, somebody once told me this. Well, you're from the East Coast. You got a good BS meter.
Yeah.
You know, and there's great people in the on-camera world. It's not a knock against them. It's just that I think when it's not your appearance, it's not your physical appearance, who you are.
Right.
You know, people. I remember the first time I did Port Charles. I went into my dressing room like the first week, and there was a box of fan mail.
Yeah.
And I'm opening it up and going, I think you're a great actor. I'm such a huge fan. Could you please send me a picture? And they're like, oh, I'm such a fan. And we hadn't aired yet. And I just remember going, oh my God,
Yeah.
it all means nothing.
Yeah.
I'd much rather be respected for what I do and what I've done rather than who I am.
Right.
Because, you know, I mean, Frank Welker is he's my hero. I see him and I'm like, when I grow
He's a
up,
hero.
I say when I grow up, I want to be Frank Welker.
no.
Yeah.
He is one of the kindest, most genuine human beings I've ever met.
Yeah.
And, you know, just, it's all about, you know, he's truly one of those people who works to live. He doesn't live to work. And, you know, that kind of mentality has served him well for many years.
Yeah, he's brilliant. When you think about your range, you know, a lot of your, I mean, you have such great range as a comedic actor, dramatic actor, in your own voice, in a character voice. I mean, when you talk to and people that are watching, how important do you think, especially in games, the range? What do you need to have 1,000 voices? Do you need to have, I mean, accents, dialects? Like, what do you think, if someone's watching, you know, to really be competitive?
No, I tell people this. I've financially done better with my own voice and Nathan Drake than just about anything I've ever done. I think, I've been blessed with a pretty good range. You know, I've joked around, you know, it's what I got in trouble in school for. And I think Rob Paulson once said that too.
Yep.
And he said, me too, this is it.
Yep.
But, you know, the great thing is I've been able to play some leading man characters like Nathan Drake and Desmond Miles, and but the range part I think has kept things for me very steady.
Yeah.
Like Rob Paulson, like Jeff Glenn Bennett, Kevin Michael Richardson. You know, it's. You know, my son is almost 17, and he's now decided this is what he wants to
that's
do.
cool,
And
man.
and you know, we've had long talks, and I said, listen, you don't ever. You're unique, and every actor out there is a
So
unique
this
talent.
is advice you gave
Right.
your son,
Yeah.
which might help somebody else out there.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
and I said nobody else can play you, especially on camera. The one thing that we talked about earlier, how Uncharted made me a better actor.
Yeah.
I got to help cast Uncharted 2 and 3 and 4, and I was on that side of the table. And the thing is, people came in to audition, and they would read with me, and then we would discuss it. Here's the thing. Nobody was bad. Just somebody was more right than the others.
Yeah.
And you realize, wow, I've done this for a long time. I'm confident I'm going to go give them me. Rather than give a producer or director what you think they want, give them you in that role. And if it's meant to be, it'll happen.
Yeah.
Because there's, if you and I are reading against each other about something and we're trying to give that director what we think he wants, we're going to give him a version that's not truthful to who you are and who I am. So if I go in and do it, this is how Nolan would do it.
Yeah.
And that's just how it works. And Chuck's going to do it this way.
Yeah.
And then they go, okay, yeah, that works. It doesn't work. And I think that's the best advice I have for that. I think range can afford you opportunities to not always be, in some of the animation I find that more so, and the games. A funny thing is, but no, you can have Patrick Warburton. I mean, he pretty much has that voice, and that's what he does. And he's slaying it with that.
Yes. Yes.
The most important thing is whatever voice you want to use, whatever you have, just know how to act with that voice. It's not just an ability to make a sound. Just learn to be an actor first. Yeah.
Yay!
Did you get that? Act!
Acting, we love it.
Well, that's all we have for part 1 with Nolan North. Wow, what a cool dude.
So great.
We'll be back next week with part 2.
Yes, we will. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We love you guys. Thanks for watching. And just remember, you always have time for a little buzz.
Come on, come on, come on and get buzzed with us.
VO Buzz Weekly is sponsored by Chuck Duran's Demos That Rock. The voiceover demo producer to the stars is now available to you. Visit demosthatrock.com and take your voiceover career to the next level.
See you next time. And remember, you always have time for a little buzz.